be nice if somebody sort of gives
Yeah, I don't know. And I guess if we wanted to make all of them, I'm not entirely sure what the fabulous race up is. Obviously, it's shaped differently than it is in order to something.
Maybe you can just keep
They're individual.
we'll have to get some
They
money.
were just changed.
This little
Yeah.
It's got to find a way to avoid finger punch.
To avoid?
Finger punch.
Oh, yeah.
Straighten the back out, but you have to just have someone give you a bunch of push on that. Think about it. Means we're the friend's office furniture.
I'm in furniture design, but yeah. You are? Yeah, that's right. Let's start a new business here.
Or I'll just do it, and I'll name the table after you. Yes.
Anyway, these are better. Well, I mean, I think it's better than before because I don't know, those little desks with the signs. I mean, I like the spread out kind of when I don't see.
Definitely was a flashback to a
Sure.
prior time.
My high school, public school, we all sat in those little desks.
With the table.
Of course, at the time, we used to have some of those wooden desks. They weren't even joined, like the desk, and then you had a chair. You had the inkwells too for your fountain pens in some of the corners of the desks. Although we didn't really use fountain pens. No, we did.
I still had those desks when I was in elementary school.
Yeah.
So in some rooms.
Yeah. So it all depends, how fast the school was updating the desks. But still, after that, there were still the desks that we had. So we had the tablet using the
Found that the further I went in school, the worse our desks got. I had great desks in elementary school. And then middle school, they were a little worse. And then by the time you get to high school, they were the junk ones.
Must have been those sort of desks that we just anyway. All right. So, I'm not sure if everybody's here yet, but yeah, questions? What's this? Oh, I looked into it. Yeah. I'm hoping it classes, like the Tuesdays classes, I should be able to get I mean, if we don't get finished Thursday, I need to have one person who's one person to go over to that, so try not to. So before we get started, I just wanted to say that this, same as the last presentation, you will have to do a little evaluation of your teammates, right?
I totally forgot to do it.
What?
And then I totally forgot to do it, and I knew I missed the deadline.
Oh yeah, you
And then you extend the deadline, I never saw the email.
Well, anyways, this time, okay, these are the questions. This is up on Blackboard. I don't think you have access to it yet because, of course, I don't want you typing it out right now while we're giving the presentation. Pay attention. You can take some notes if you want, I suppose. But think about it. The 5 questions. Now, these 5 questions are also in Teammates. And one of my students found Teammates for me, and I'd forgotten all about it. But Teammates allows you to give feedback to your teammates anonymously. So I have it set up anonymously. So I can see it, of course, but the feedback will only go to, I've got you set up in Teams and Teammates, and you will answer these questions for each teammate, and then the answers will just go to that teammate without your name on it. So it's all anonymous. I don't know whether you managed to give the feedback to each other from the previous one, the key value presentation, or not. I know some students in some classes were kind of worried about, well, it's not really anonymous, and I don't feel like I should be giving, or, I want to give my feedback if it's not anonymous. Well, anyway, so this is why I'm trying this teammates. Somebody else told me about this way back last May, and I forgot all about it. So, with teammates, though, you will get an email letting you know that it's open and you can use it. Then I believe you get another email reminding you, I forget when, and I believe you get a third email like 15 minutes before it's going to close. Something like that. So, it should keep reminding you. It should keep reminding you to do it this time. Although most people did it. There wasn't a problem, really. The other thing is, though, you do have this form, this Word document, because I want you to fill it out as well and submit that to Blackboard, because I have to grade it in Blackboard. So, with this one, you can, make room in between them. You can put your comments in here for each teammate after question 1, each teammate after question 2. You don't have to have a separate page for everybody. Okay? You just do it. Each question, talk about your 4 teammates. That's fine. So I don't know. I mean, most of the stuff is the same sort of thing we've always been talking about. So we've been talking about delivery, PowerPoint slides, organization, content, all this type of thing. So it's just basically the same thing, except teammates wants you to ask questions. That's why I have to want to coordinate it all with teammates. Okay, so any questions about that? Oh, it's due Sunday night, I think it is. I think I said Sunday night to give the feedback. Now, if for some reason we don't get finished on Thursday, because I don't think we'll have time for everybody to present today, if we don't finish by Thursday, then I will, extend the due date for that, because obviously whoever still has to present in another week has to present. So I'll extend that. But let's hope we can get finished in the 2 days. Particularly, where are we here? Because it's really, kind of nerve-wracking, I guess, if one person is left over at the end and that one person has to present next Tuesday. All on his or her own. Oh, whoops, what am I doing in here? I'm in the wrong place here. Needs grading. Yeah. Whoops.
With the evaluation, it's just like last time, 3-4 sentences?
Yeah, it's just, so it's just like last time. With that sheet that I showed you, just, write a sentence, maybe 2 sentences for each team, for each question. Oh, yeah, you don't have to go on and on and on about it. It's mostly to do with giving, feedback to improvements. But if you do find that everything was great, the organization was perfect, I followed, it was logical, I had no problem following the presentation, that's fine, just say that. But if there was something, I got a little bit mixed up here, or something like, maybe there was something that was a little bit, okay, then do give some feedback to help improve. Okay, because you still have one big presentation to do after this one. All right, now we can get started here. The other thing is everybody happy with, or I don't know, happy with? How do you feel about having somebody in the class? I will ask somebody in the class to hold this up its 5-minute mark. Is that going to be distracting?
Yes.
Oh, no.
I know some people like, or else at 6 minutes we can have an alarm go off and then you got to stop.
Are you gonna take points off?
What's this?
We're gonna take points off if we exceed.
Yes, that's right.
Although 6 minutes is the top.
One of the things in the rubric for grading is at the time or whatever, very close to the time limit or very far away. Like if it's 2 minutes long, you lose points. But if it's 10 minutes long, you lose points too. So that's part of the rubric for grading. So I don't know if
Warning would be good, I suppose.
somebody wants a warning. If you want the warning, I don't know. Well, let us know ahead of time. Eric doesn't want the warning, but not Eric. I don't know, my two Erics. I look back here and I have 2 Erics. So, all right. So let us know, and if I can ask somebody to do this for me, because I've got to take some notes here. So, if somebody, all right. So we'll ask everybody ahead of time. All right. Our first presenter. Oh, well, actually, yeah, we have many volunteers. Oh.
Always willing to volunteer to get it out of the way.
You do want to volunteer? Okay.
Always willing to get it out of the way first.
Sure, that's fine. All right, then I'll do the. Anybody else can volunteer too. That's right.
Where's the download button? Where did they leave it this time? There.
Now, you want to use the clicker, right?
Yeah, where's that? Is that here?
Yeah.
Does it work?
Just make sure it's working okay.
We're about to find out.
Oh, is it on?
I don't know.
That might be it. That might be a trick.
There we go. Got a light on it
It's
now.
got a little.
It did turn on
over
now.
there. Yeah. Okay. So just make sure, because I think everybody will want to use that.
Perhaps.
Okay, so Eric does not want to have.
I might as well. Might as well. I don't know. It's kind of dense.
You don't know? I don't know. I know some people say they like it, some people don't. Some people wanted 2 horns, 2-minute mark and 1-minute mark. Well,
Can I have a timer go off every minute? Actually,
Yeah, I know, that's
so I
pretty
so I can explicitly keep track of it. No.
Okay, so whenever you're ready.
Hi. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the Bhopal gas tragedy and crisis management relating to it. So it's kind of an exercise in kind of looking towards the past to plan for the future. In Bhopal, 1984, December 3rd, a leak of aerosolized methyl isocyanate gas killed at least 3,000 people, and potentially up until today, potentially as many as 15,000, with more than 300,000 people injured. Blame could be placed primarily at the feet of intransigent plant managers who chose to disregard established safety regulations, and to this day it remains the worst industrial accident in recorded history. Methyl isocyanate. Is anybody familiar with the fire triangle? Fire triangle. This is bad news. This is potentially one of the nastiest chemicals you could ever use in the manufacture of anything. MIC is used in production of pesticides, but it burns. It reacts violently with water. If you inhale it, it will kill you. And it's excessively reactive to things that are not water. So when the Union Carbide was managing an extremely hazardous chemical in a very poor way. When the gas tragedy happened, immediately afterwards, Warren Anderson, CEO of Union Carbide, went to India to personally survey everything. They said all the right things. They said, well, we can't think about profits right now. They donated lots of money to help out with cleanup and with medical aid for those who are affected, and they accepted the moral responsibility for the tragedy, though not legal liability. Additionally, they released the MIC documents to the Indian government. One of the assumptions was that the people who worked there were not, or the people who lived around there, rather, were not explicitly aware of how dangerous this chemical was. One of the big things that they did, though it wasn't illegal, was to attempt to have the case against them tried in Indian court rather than the United States courts. This was kind of the first example in history of an American company owning an asset overseas and then having an issue there that ended up having to go to court. And they ended up settling in Indian court for substantially less money, out of Indian court rather, for substantially less money than the community feels that they probably should have been liable for had they been tried in a U.S. court. There are a couple flaws in their response, however. India, especially in 1984, was not a very well-connected place, which allowed private photographers, local media, all sorts of individuals like that to get their message out to the public substantially quicker than Union Carbide was kind of able to, and that was one of their biggest downfalls with regard to it. Although they were put in a terrible place, that they just couldn't stay in front of the story, which is something that's really, really important. Obviously, there wasn't much for them to go on because nothing like this had ever happened before. However, by the way, what follow are some of the pictures that did come out from India after this happened. You have been warned. Examples of poor publicity. The Union Carbide reps or the execs were able to walk away basically paying nothing. In fact, they weren't even charged until 2010, where they were forced to pay some pittance, $2,000 a person. The picture on the right is one of the most famous pictures from this. It's called Bhopal Gas Tragedy Girl. There are a number of different pictures. This had won a number of awards, but it was one of the biggest. It was the thing that people in the U.S. saw. That's called bad publicity. You don't want the public to see pictures of corpses, which there were many. Not a fun place, not a good time. However, it was a worst-case scenario for Union Carbide. The fundamentally, there was nothing that prevented. They didn't do anything illegal in their response. They didn't attempt to cover anything up. They didn't really attempt to pass blame onto anybody. But when you have 3,000 people killed, hundreds of thousands injured, there's only so much you can do. So what they ended up doing was more or less okay damage control, given the situation that they found themselves in. The biggest thing that they did not do is they didn't maintain good ethics with the court. Had they been a little bit more open about that, they probably could have sorted things out a little bit better. And that's one of the big things that people have harped on them for in the past. In fact, as a result of things like this, or specifically this, many laws were passed that determined how these kind of cases had to be dealt with in international court. With regard to the moral responsibility versus legal liability, that kind of stems from, okay, well, we Union Carbide admit that something terrible had happened, but it wasn't really our fault. It certainly wasn't enough of our fault for us to claim to say that, yes, we did it, our bad. Oops, I forgot I ran out of slides. I'm done. Questions?
Questions, yes.
Is anybody familiar with this already?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
Union Carbide?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That was big.
Yeah, I remember the whole thing.
My dad actually worked with MIC in the U.S. as well, so I'm familiar with a lot of the laws they ended up having to pass to deal with it because he had to fix companies.
Yeah. So, yeah, here's a question. We need to have some questions. Yeah.
Like, how bad do you think it would have been had something like this happened in the U.S.? Like, how many more regulars would have come through?
The kind of the issue there is the reason that so many people were killed in Bhopal is because Bhopal was a slum. You know, within a couple miles of this factory were hundreds of thousands of people living. You know, if a factory like this had existed in the U.S., if a facility like this had existed in the U.S., it probably would not have been in a population center. So far fewer people would have been injured, far fewer people would have died, and as a result, it probably would not have catalyzed change in laws as much as it ended up doing because of the amount of people that were affected by it. It's interesting you mentioned that. I was just talking about my dad having to work with things like that, and his company had a plant in Kentucky, which worked with MIC. MIC is an intermediate chemical in the production of pesticide, and they transported it on rail cars. And after this happened, the towns around said, "Whoa! You can't bring your incredibly nasty stuff through our town." So they had to work around it. But that was kind of the big extent, you know, the changing of laws regarding how you can move and how you can transport extremely dangerous things to ensure that something like that didn't happen in the future.
Good question? Okay. All right. Another volunteer?
You're number 2 on.
Number one.
Oh, you're number 1. I know, but I don't want him to stop anybody from presenting if they want to go.
Am I stopping
Yeah.
someone?
Yeah.
Can I do my own presentation in Blackboard somehow? I forgot to email it to myself. Can I view my own in Blackboard somehow?
It's in Blackboard.
Right. Oh, it's in Gray.
He's never remembered
I think you go
submitting
back to
things
this.
to Blackboard. That's how I got it figured. I'm in Blackboard, but let me check. Maybe it just mysteriously appeared somehow.
Perhaps.
What am I thinking? Oh,
The right button.
the one, yeah, and the other one, if you need to go back, it's one beside it. Okay, just let me, I've got to find. So it's okay with the time? There, back there? We give you a 1 minute time? Okay, we just want to make sure, so that,
If it's not okay, it's not okay.
yeah, it's okay. All right.
Hello, everybody. My name is Irina, and I will give you a little background on Volkswagen emission scandal today. So pretty much Volkswagen betrayed everyone who likes to breathe fresh air. So agenda for today is what has the company done, how did they do it, how they were found out, and what were the circumstances. Also, how did the company react to accusations, social media crisis communication, and conclusion. So what did they do? First of all, they cheated in emission tests. They installed the defeat device into every vehicle that was positioned as a clean diesel vehicle in their marketing campaign. People who were environmentally friendly fall for it and purchase the vehicles. So the vehicles are better for the environment, but it actually had the opposite effect. And cars, actually clean diesel engines, were operating normally in the lab while tests have been performed on those cars, but when they were operating normally on the road, they were actually releasing 40 times more nitrogen monoxide than normal and polluting the environment. So how they were found out? International Council on Clean Transportation made some tests on Jetta and BMW, and they found out that emissions on the Jetta were more than normal. So they passed this case into the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and EPA did more tests and they found out the problem. What are the circumstances? Nitrogen monoxide is a pollutant that causes asthma and really heavy respiratory tract diseases and heart problems and eventually death. And latest research shows that in the UK, mortality rate from asthma and heart problems actually went up. How did Volkswagen react? CEO of the company released the apology, but it happened a few weeks after the accusations, and Volkswagen actually been silent for a long time. There was nothing on their website for a long time. Also, CEO of the company released this apology.
Meine Damen und Herren, die unregelmäßigen
Ladies and gentlemen, the irregularities in our group's diesel engines go against everything Volkswagen stands for.
Auch ich habe zum jetzigen Zeitpunkt noch nicht die
At present, I also do not yet have the answers to all the questions.
Which is not true, because research showed that they have been planning this since 2008.
But we're working hard to find out exactly what happened. To do that, we're putting everything on the table, as quickly, rigorously, and transparently as possible. And we continue to cooperate closely with the relevant government organizations and authorities. This quick and full clarification has the highest priority. We owe that to our customers, our employees, and the public. And to be frank with you, manipulation and Volkswagen, that must never be allowed to happen again. Ladies and gentlemen, millions of people all over the world trust our brands.
So the rest of his apology is pretty much he is advertising his company. He's talking about how amazing the technologies are, but there was not that much apology going on after that. So after that, he resigned, washed his hands, and the new CEO was appointed. Following us some examples of their social media crisis communication, as you can see, there were good ones as well there were bad ones. The good ones were that when they informed everyone that they launched the dieselinfo.com website where everybody could go into, and if they have any frequently asked questions, they can check whether their vehicle was affected, what will be the outcome of that. as well as the bad examples when they wrote that, we hope you had a fantastic New Year's. Do you have any resolutions? And people got really mad and they said, you have to be green or just you have to practice what you preach. So as a conclusion, Volkswagen should have reacted faster. They should have been taking blame on the executive level, but instead they blamed it on the engineers first. Lying, misinterpretation, and intentional wrongdoing, and also the problem was global, but it was handled differently. They paid a lot of fees in the US, but not in Europe, which made people in Europe and as well as Asia pretty mad. Any questions?
Questions
Entschuldigung.
or comments?
Madame,
Yeah. Or what did you think of that video? Yes.
How come they didn't have to pay any fines in Europe or Asia?
Because of the legal regulations, a little bit different.
Like you can get away with, like,
You could get away with that, yeah. And also in the United States, they made a lot of people mad because they, as a part of their reimbursement or as a part of their apology, they issued $500 gift card to every affected vehicle owner. But that $500 gift card was, you can only use it on Volkswagen. So it's pretty much, here's the money, but then the revenue will come back to our company.
Did they do anything to modify the vehicles that were putting out illegal emissions?
It's still, they did a recall, and owners of the cars who really cared and they wanted a change, that a lot of people just could not drive their vehicle, even though it was safe, but they had this guilt about, environment. They could have taken their car into the dealership and they would modify. Yeah.
Does the European Union have an EPA, kind of like America does, or is there any organization to deal with environmental stuff like this? Because maybe that's why I'm thinking they might have gotten looser guidelines over there. They kind of got away with it.
I'm not really sure about that. That's a good question for me to check on that. But I'm sure they do. I'm sure every country.
Most countries in Europe have a green party, and they vote for the green party, and they have representatives sitting in the parliament, in the European Union Parliament. They have, so being green is big. It's important. Much more important than here. I mean, we have a green party too.
Do we really?
Not many people vote for it.
Right.
You don't even have one here, but yeah. So I'm sure they must have something like the EPA as well. Yeah, Eric.
Did VW do anything illegal, or were they just misleading consumers?
Yes, they did.
So something about what they did was illegal.
So just imagine that the marketing campaign was targeted on clean diesel vehicle, but actually, let's see. But actually, when the car was driving outside, the clean diesel turned into something 40 times worse than normal. But they pretty much lied.
So it was the fact that they lied. It wasn't putting an illegal amount of pollutants into the air, just far more than they said it was. I know the EU has substantially greater laws regarding lying to consumers in advertising.
Well, the problem was that they installed software inside of the engine, a couple codes of software, and that software could detect when the car was tested. So when the car was tested, everything was running normally.
Will be emissions like this.
And there's probably some kind of the software probably knew by the position of the steering wheel, or maybe by the speed, or maybe by the pressure, but software just knew. But when you out on the road, that's it. That nice clean part of the car just vanishes away. Any other questions?
In order for the cars to perform better. because with the emission controls on it.
I think that there's like a maximum.
It's diesel anyway, so yeah.
There's like a maximum amount of pollutants you can like have your car releasing.
Oh, yeah.
So like I think that when it was getting tested, like it would,
Yeah.
the software would not say
yeah.
it was doing that, and it would just do it anyway.
Okay.
So that was the biggest part.
Yeah.
That was the lie.
Yeah. Because they knew about it.
So they
It
ended up
wasn't even something that was discovered and they didn't know about it. Yeah.
No, they've been
Yeah.
planning this since 2008, and this was carefully. There's no way that something like that would be done on an engineer level. It has been approved by the executives. And 11 million cars worldwide were affected. So just imagine if it's 40 times more than normal of nitrogen monoxide, how many pollutants are in the air right now. So the planet is in trouble in the long run.
Okay.
Just because of their greediness. Okay, I will let others
Very
do
true.
that.
No, but that's good. Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, so, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of past the point of introductions here, but again, my name is Eric Bonowitz. My crisis is the NFL concussions. So I'm kind of going to try and take everyone through a timeline of when it really began, when it gained traction, and where we are today. So background, it started the link between CTE and concussions in contact sports, so CTE being chronic traumatic encephalopathy, I believe it's called. It was found by Dr. Bennett Omalu. Next question really was the NFL prepared? Did they know about this to begin with? And to be blunt, yes, they did. In 1994, they had the Mild Brain Injury Committee organized. So they knew something was going on. And that was headed by Dr. Elliot Hellman, who we'll talk about in a second. Following this, yes, they did deny everything that came out. Where it really gained traction was when former players started committing suicide. And following that, a protocol was established. So the NFL's initial response, as I said, this came out in 2002, and they said, no, there's no link between this. This was just unfounded. They said nothing between it. The committee then said that they investigated it. They found the same samples. They did the same tests. They said there's no risk of return after concussion, mild, severe, anything of that nature in 2005. So that's 3 years later. Between 2005 and 2007, 2 players committed suicide, 2 former Pittsburgh Steelers. Dr. Omalu, who had found CTE to begin with, did an autopsy of their brain, found that CTE was there, and this is when it really started to pick up. After that, the head of the NFL's committee did step down. Following that, they had a minor protocol right here, but all it was is you can't force players to play if they don't want to. And anyone that's played sports, we have a student athlete here, I'm sure you can tell us the same, you want to play, you want to be on the field. So that same policy is in effect. After this, as I said, gained traction. We see the first set of lawsuits come out from the players. It was 80 lawsuits to begin with. So the suicides and the lawsuits. What happened after this was a former former Bears defensive back, and this is a bit graphic, took his own life, but he knew of this, as other players did, and he shot himself in the chest so that they could autopsy his brain. They found more CTE there. As I said, 80 lawsuits filed after this. Then a class action lawsuit was filed by more than 2,000 former players. The NFL did reach a settlement with these players. It actually happened in Philadelphia for $765 in compensatory and punitive damages. So that money, $5 million, went to each player included in the lawsuit, and they went to fund programs specifically for head injuries. So here's a bit of a response. I'm sure everyone can recognize this movie here with Will Smith. It's actually it talks about the doctor who found it, and I just have a quick clip, kind of briefly explaining it. a great answer.
I want to see it.
Over the past few years, a number of former players have committed suicide after battling depression. Afterwards, they gave their brains to science, and upon examination, they showed telltale signs of CTE. Scientists don't yet have a way of diagnosing CTE for sure besides doing an autopsy. So apart from the 50 deceased former players confirmed to have it, they can only suspect that hundreds more are living with it right now.
9, 7, 8, 4, 3, 2.
9, 7, 8.
For a while, the NFL was completely repressing research. They were telling players that concussions were a relatively safe type of injury to suffer. But with pressure mounting, the league changed course, settling a class action suit for $765 million and pouring money into CTE research. The issue hasn't gone away at all. The NFL's been trying to solve it, and it seems like they're putting genuine efforts into it, but it just might not be possible. In theory, concussed players are no longer allowed to enter games. They've moved the kickoff 5 yards down the field, so a lot more kickoffs become touchbacks, so you don't have the high-speed impacts happen when the kicking team is trying to cover the kick and tackle the player. They've changed the rules in terms of head-to-head hits. On defense, you can't use your head or your helmet as a weapon. If you're a running back, you also can't lead with your head to hit other players' heads. Those are the easiest things to target. They're kind of the lowest hanging fruit. They can't get rid of concussions entirely, those rule changes. Some concussions happen on the most random incidental plays. I mean, you have these huge, fast guys running at high speed, so even if you ban specific types of hits, we're still seeing concussions happen with alarming frequency. There's another problem. Even if they got rid of concussions completely, some of the scientists think that subconcussive hits, so even milder type of hits that we might not even notice watching on TV, also lead to CTE over time. They're still trying to figure that out, but if that were true, that would basically mean that the game of football as we know it is fundamentally unsafe. The NFL is more popular than ever. This rule gets over 100 million people, so that's a third of the country watching it. And just
So that video, it really explains it best. It's going to be hard to eliminate concussions from the sport completely, but the NFL, as we can see here, the concussion protocol has had a bit of an effect. So this is their response. It's more of a proactive response to head-on-head contact. The biggest change to this was our medical timeouts. So they have spotters now in the booths upstairs and on the sidelines that say, this guy received a hit, helmet to helmet, he's coming out of the game. And there are no questions after that. They've seen a 35% decline in concussions from this, and I believe it's around 45 to 50. There are different statistics from this as to head-to-head contact. We can see here that this was first announced and implemented in 2016. So it was 2002 that they really started to notice this. This is when they found CTE, and that we're now in 2016, and this is the first thing being done about it. So to conclude, the NFL failed to take responsibility. They did not make player safety the number one concern. They did not have an appropriate response ready, and they did not implement it immediately. And the last question I have, something to leave you with, is the lawsuit really enough? You think back, you saw the statistics from that video, all the players that received concussions. Is it enough in funding? Is it enough that's going to help them when they have to deal with these problems? So that's all I have for us today. Questions?
Why do you think the NFL decided not to take responsibility since it's a non-profit organization?
That's tough to say. I think the biggest thing was fan base and viewership. So I know we talked to a lot of parents today, and they say, I'm not letting my kid play football just because of things like this. And I think that threatened them. That's, I guess, my opinion on it, but that's a great question.
Do you know if any other professional contact sports are doing anything like this, like hockey?
I know hockey is.
Have they followed the NFL's lead?
Yeah, I know what they're doing. When I played, they had actually sensors in the helmet that could track, I guess, how much movement of the head. They're basically banning fighting in the NHL. I know that, yeah, they've seen it similar instances where players are taking their own lives, former players. So I know they're doing that.
It didn't come to the crisis in the NHL the way it did in the NFL. As the NHL reacted.
They've got spotters now too in the NHL.
Pardon?
They have spotters in the NHL now too, like the concussion spotters.
Oh yeah. Sure. Sidney Crosby. When one of the stars has a concussion, that's a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal.
There's
I don't know. seem to take care of it better. I don't know.
So like fewer head impacts.
Watching, those videos, I'm sitting here cringing like, oh my god.
Some of those guys were literally knocked unconscious.
Yeah.
A couple where you can see it. Yeah.
And the hardest thing too in the spot is you don't have to lose consciousness.
Yeah,
It's just
you don't
that
have to.
collision. As I said, there's no test.
We lost consciousness. Well, maybe there's a problem.
What's that? They didn't. Okay. Yeah. So.
The head is a false sense of protection.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. You're a rugby guy. There. I heard there were almost no concussions.
Football, I have nerve damage in my neck.
Yeah.
It's because I'm not a big guy. I mean, go head first into as many people as I could.
Yeah.
Because I get you the big hits.
I don't know. It's scary stuff, but.
Okay. Thanks very much. Football's a terrible, terrible game. I should stop playing.
So to follow me.
He didn't have a concussion, but he had another very bad injury when he was in high school. So he can't play sports much. Knee, the ligaments and all that sort of thing, he had to have it operated on. Like he was maybe 16 or 17. Yeah. He's not a big kid. He looks like a soccer player. He's built like a soccer player, not a football player. Anyway. Okay.
How everybody doing? I'm doing the Ray Rice crisis, which was on domestic violence in 2014. I'm going to talk about Ray Rice briefly. I'm going to explain the domestic violence case in 2014. I'm going to give you the statements that he addressed to the commissioner of the NFL, how the public eye viewed the crime, and how Roger Goodell, the commissioner, handled this case. First, Ray Rice was a 6-year running back, NFL running back for the Baltimore Ravens, Super Bowl champion, 3-time Pro Bowler, and was charged with third-degree assault for a crime committed against his wife. Initially, his fiancée at the time. The initial response, the NFL initially responded to the situation by giving him an initial suspension of 2 games before the season had even started. And they had a meeting which Ray Rice told the commissioner what happened, brought his wife with him to explain the story from her side as well, and tried to really get on the commissioner's side of really not to look into further detail of really what happened. And there was one little snippet video at the beginning before this whole case emerged about him just pushing her off the elevator and dragging her from the floor. But when the full video came out, it was a totally different response. This is the full video I got for you. Mother just typed it.
Football star cut by the Ravens tonight, suspended by the NFL after a troubling new video has surfaced. You'll remember these images. Rice dragging his then fiancée out of an elevator. But tonight, for the first time, we're seeing something else. What happened in the moments before, and then what happened next, now costing him his job. Tonight, the NFL taking action. What will authorities now do? ABC's Ryan Smith.
The video chilling. Football star Ray Rice following his then fiancée Janae into an Atlantic City hotel elevator, striking her once, then again, seemingly punching her so hard she hits a railing and is knocked out cold. You see her here, lying on the floor, then slumped near the elevator. Players today.
So, after the full video came out, Roger Goodell reevaluated the situation and took the situation in a more serious manner. He indefinitely suspended Ray Rice and got him released from the organization he was playing for, the Baltimore Ravens. And not only was he suspended indefinitely, he was suspended with no pay. And shoot, when you're in the summer in football, you're getting paid. No pay, suspension, and he changed the domestic violence rule in the NFL to first-time offenders, 6-game suspension, second-time offenders, lifetime ban. The NFL history with the NFL history with domestic violence was ridiculous. It goes back to the 60s, 70s, probably even earlier. The correct punishment is not dealt to any of these players. A lot of things go unseen, and not a broad topic in the NFL. A lot of football players usually have these problems due to what they're taking, PEDs, whatever they're taking, gives them domestic violence against their significant other. And the suspension with Ray Rice was, to me, it was a little bit lenient, a little bit too lenient. So Roger Goodell and the NFL was not really concerned with the situation. Really not going into depth when the news first came out. You know, he kind of pushed it to the side and went off from word to mouth instead of going further and getting the full detail of really what happened. And I believe the NFL wanted this to go unseen and wanted to hide the video just to protect the image of the NFL. What could have been done, Roger Goodell could have got the full video when it first came out instead of waiting for weeks and months for it to go by and the situation build more. He could have been more attentive to the situation at hand. He could have put his hand more in the situation with Ray Rice and given him an indefinite suspension when the news first dropped. And the initial punishment could have been harder. He could have indefinitely suspended Ray Rice, as I just said.
Questions?
What was he thinking?
I don't want to say it, but what gets me is that this stuff is going on all the time. We don't know about well, we heard here about
insane.
There was one, I don't know if it was a football or basketball player or something, but
a football player was
suspended. He was hitting his kids.
Yeah, last year. And literally a couple weeks later, they found out an NFL kicker was beating his wife for 10 years plus.
This stuff is going on. How do they not know this?
They want to protect the image.
How does who not know it? You're making some assumption that they don't know it.
Well, yeah, I'm making that assumption now. How do they not know it? I don't know what they do or not. You can't believe everything you hear.
I think they hide it. I really think
they do know it, and they're just not. Yeah.
Because if a woman is getting beaten on, just is beaten on in general, like hit, of course they're going to speak about it, especially no matter who it is. And for someone to be beating on his wife like this in a video to see it, to really tell the story, now that's one thing. But if you find out someone's beating on their wife, just in general, why is that not like your number one priority to handle first? I don't know.
I feel like it's just something more about society in general that, you know, it's like, oh, it's not my business. I mean, the NFL is just like a person who she might have told that story to who did nothing. I think they have a moral responsibility as an institution, but every person who ever hears a story like that has a moral responsibility to make somebody aware of that. And I think as a society, especially in this country at least, that it's very much like it's not my business and I don't want to get involved, which really is a cop-out to I don't want to waste my time and my energy to get involved in something that's my sake.
I think that the NFL's kind of got their head on a little straighter now since like stuff like this. Now that they've added a new rule, but like he initially only got like a 2-game suspension, and then there's Tom Brady scandal where he got 3 initially, and it was just kind of like a.
I mean, yeah, he got 4. I mean, they want to be more harder on the suspensions. However, when news just comes out about somebody beating their wife for 10 years, it's like, well, what are they really trying to do here? Like, are they really trying to just protect themselves and not the woman? Like, I don't understand it really. I mean, I guess they're trying to go a little harder and in their eyes, but it's a lot of stuff we don't know, as we said, and it comes out and it's like, damn, this has been going on for years.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm glad you guys could all meet so we can discuss this scandal and how we can take lessons learned from it and apply it to our company. The scandal in particular is regarding Paula Deen. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with Paula Deen. We can go over that for sure. So the agenda for the meeting will be, we're going to discuss Paula Deen, who she is, and the crisis in detail. And then we're going to discuss her response and her team's response to the crisis. After that, we're going to look at the public's reaction to her response, and that will include PR professionals as well as her own colleagues. We're going to evaluate the response and how it affected her career, essentially putting it on the chopping block, as you will see, saw in the title. And then we're going to apply those lessons to our company and see what we can do differently so that we can better manage our own crises as they come here. After that, we can do some questions and open discussion if anybody has any comments. Essentially, we want to apply these lessons so that when the dominoes start to fall, we can stop them in their tracks. So who is Paula Deen? Paula Deen is a celebrity chef from Georgia. And she's known for lots of butter and Southern-style cooking and very good personality for television, yowl, as she would put it. She opened her first restaurant in 1991, actually in a Best Western. A lot of those smaller motels have little restaurant space. And then later there, she opened another restaurant with her son in downtown Savannah. So picked up by the Food Network in 1999, she had a connection who knew someone at the Food Network and thought that she would be a good fit. And in 2002, she got her first cooking show, Paula's Home Cooking. In the year 2012, she actually had 3 separate shows with Food Network. And she also had several product lines branded with her that she had partners with. Those were at Home Depot, Walmart, Target. She had a gig with Novo Nordisk where she was a sponsor for a product that she also got a very lucrative contract with. So she did very well and was a very savvy businesswoman until the crisis. So in 2012, in May, she was being sued by a former employee of one of her restaurants, Lisa Jackson. Lisa Jackson was suing her and her brother for racial and sexual discrimination. And she had claimed that that Bubba, who was her brother, who was a manager at the restaurant, had made lewd comments in front of her, was watching pornographic videos at work, and also had both Paula and Bubba had made racial comments in front of her at the workplace, including using the N-word in jokes, and also Paula had described in front of employees her desire to host an antebellum period themed wedding, which involved essentially having a wedding where all of the servers were African American, essentially thought it would be great to have a wedding dedicated to the old times and slavery, which I have no idea how anyone would think that that's actually good, regardless of what the PR response would be. So essentially, Lisa Jackson filed for discrimination. In May, she gave a deposition in court where the attorney asked her, had she ever used the N-word in any context? Paula's response was yes, of course, until the next question. I think a lot of people were saying that she got, railed, and of course she used the N-word because she was back there. I think it's not so much that she had used the N-word, it was that she had no real emotional response to it, and it was not as remorseful. In a month later, a full month after the deposition was given, the transcript from the deposition was leaked to the press, and she had to give a response. The press started coming after her. She had a Today Show interview scheduled with Matt Lauer to respond 3 days after the crisis, which she canceled the morning of, and instead she released her own YouTube video apologizing. And then after that failed, she released 3 videos that day. She rescheduled her interview with Matt Lauer. So her crisis response, essentially, I don't know why that's not working. She had canceled her Today Show interview and put out these YouTube responses. Right away, it made it look like she had something to hide. The videos that she released were vague. They did not give any context. She was basically essentially apologizing, which you'll see in the video, but for what she does not say. And when she reappears on the interview with Matt Lauer, after her canceled interview, she kind of claims to be the victim, that the press is portraying her in the wrong way, she's being given the wrong image, and that essentially she feels bad because she has to comfort her friends because they feel bad for her. I wish we could watch the video if we had more time. She also contradicts her deposition testimony. In her deposition, a further question asks, have you used the N-word? And she says several times, yes. Once in relation to a bank robbery incident, but then says that she's most likely used the word several times since. In the interview, she says that she used it one time, strictly when she had been held at gunpoint by an assailant, and then that was it. And at the same time on the show, she gives no apology. She had given apologies in YouTube videos, but never apologized on the national platform. And let's see if we can get into this video here. This is Paula's first apology video. I don't know if we can get into it or not. Let's see. It's not working, so we'll go in here. It's important that you watch the first video so you can really see how vague this response was.
I want to apologize to everybody for the wrong that I've done. I want to learn and grow from this. Inappropriate, hurtful language is totally unacceptable. I've made plenty of mistakes along the way, but I beg you, my children, my team, my fans, my partners, I beg for your forgiveness. Please forgive me for the mistakes that I've made.
That was her first video that she released. If you notice, it's edited, it's choppy, as in maybe someone said she shouldn't have said that. And really it gives no detail as to what she said, what is she apologizing for, because she doesn't want to give herself a bad image, which I think just really hurt her in the long run. So, I think that her response definitely was insincere, and the videos were not good for her. The aftermath and the public response to this crisis was that the Food Network canceled her show. They canceled her show the day that she rejected the first interview with Matt Lauer. They canceled all 3 of her shows. Caesars Entertainment, the day of the Lauer interview, said that they were going to close all 4 of her branded restaurants in their casinos across the country. Many companies, 9-10 companies in total, ended up cutting ties with Paula Deen that week of the interview, including Target, Sears, Walmart, Home Depot, Novo Nordisk, and several more. Reactions to the crisis by her colleagues. I don't know if many of you are familiar with Andrew Zimmer from Bizarre Foods. He's on a partner network of Food Network. He said right away that they made the right decision in having Paula removed from the network. They're no room for racism. And another chef, Lee, who had appeared on her show, essentially said the same thing. I think it's really interesting how he says that she's great, she had a great personality, she's funny, she's this. Nothing trumps racism. If you're a racist, you can't use anything else as an excuse. PR professionals also had a lot to say about Paula's response. David Johnson, who's the CEO of Strategic Visions, essentially said it was like the worst apology by a celebrity that he'd ever seen. And then Mark, CEO of Mark Allen & Company, essentially says something very similar, and that there really was no full responsibility taken by Paula for this. So what went wrong? In her deposition, she did not show enough remorse. She wasn't descriptive enough, I think, when asked. I think that the public would have been more forgiving had she said, listen, I grew up in this time, it's no excuse, I'm so embarrassed. But yes, when I was ignorant, I had used this word before, I've come so far, and she did not really do that.
Her response time, another issue. In my opinion, once she found out that she was being sued, once she gave this deposition, she had an entire month after she gave that deposition, knowing she's a celebrity. She should have anticipated this video would have been leaked. She should have met with the crisis communication team to plan for when she knew this would be released. Instead, I think she just said a prayer that it would never be released. Her response method was another thing that is highly criticized, going on YouTube and making 3 very choppy videos that don't really describe what she's apologizing for, and it kind of just looks like she's trying to save face. There was inconsistency in her testimony, which we discussed earlier. You need to provide accurate information, and you need to stay concise. And then claiming to be the victim, definitely not a good option when you have used the N-word, against other people. And then blaming others for her actions. In the Lauer interview, Matt Lauer asked her if she thinks the N-word is offensive. And she said, "I'm not really sure. That's been something that troubles me because people in my kitchens use that word and it hurts me so much." So she's essentially blaming African Americans for her use of a derogatory term. Lessons that we can learn and apply to our company as a result of this crisis, I would say proactively plan for crisis communication. I think it's necessary to have a crisis communication plan in place, which she clearly did not. And timely and accurate response. If we know a crisis is imminent, if we know that somebody said something, or we know that there's bad information, at that point, we can't take it away. We need to make sure that we have a plan to make it public and to address the situation and not hope that it doesn't get out. Consistency in our message. Clearly, we need to be consistent in all the information we provide the public to give good face to the company and make sure that no one thinks that we're trying to hide anything. Always take responsibility for our words. People use poor choice of words, and once the word is out, you cannot change that. If a poor choice of word is used, we need to take responsibility and make an apology to our customers and get ahead of the storm. Paul had 1 month between the time it was released when she gave the testimony that she should have met with the communications team. If we know something is a possibility of getting out, let's not hope it doesn't. Let's plan for when it does. And the most important thing we can do is avoidance. We can avoid this risk by just treating everyone equal. Not only is it a moral responsibility, but it's a responsibility for good business. We treat all of our customers, all of our employees with respect, regardless of their race, religion, creed, gender. Then we can all get along, we can be productive, and at the same time, we can avoid issues like this. At this point, I'd like to open up any questions or discussions regarding the crisis, anything you'd like more information about. Yes.
Was there any other apology issue besides YouTube video or her being on TV shows? Maybe something on social media or her website, anything like that?
The YouTube videos were her only real apology. They were all 3 videos within the same day, within like a 4-hour period. Essentially, they released a 40-second video, probably several hours later, like, this is not good, this is terrible, let's release another one, and then another one. And they were really the only time she apologized. And again, on the Today Show, she actually wrapped up the Today Show interview by saying, "I've made many mistakes, and anybody who's never made a mistake out there, please pick up that rock and throw it in my head and kill me." She's just being very dramatic, melodramatic, all about her. So really, that was the only really time she truly apologized.
How did her fans react? Were they like a bunch of old ladies that carried her? Or?
So interestingly enough, most of her fan base obviously rallied behind her because the Paula Deen they know is a half-hour-long episode where it's scripted and she's funny and she's very granny-like and a good cook. So most people did rally behind her. There was a Facebook page with like 500,000 likes to say Food Network shouldn't have dropped her. But in essence, it's not really a matter of whether or not she's contrite, whether she's apologetic, whether she's sincere. It's about how the public, who will never really know what it truly feels, is going to perceive her as, and that's a risk to an organization. So. Thank you. I tested it on my computer, like thinking.
But it would be the same thing with the other presentation.
I know. It works sometimes and it doesn't work sometimes. So I don't get it. That's weird. It's really weird. Yeah.
So my presentation today is going to be about the NFL's quote-unquote Deflategate. So what happened was there was the AFC Championship game, so it stands for American Football Conference game. For most people that don't know, this game is absolutely important because the winner of this game goes to the Super Bowl. And everyone knows what the Super Bowl is. So the Patriots ended up playing the Colts at home at this game, which is in Foxborough, Massachusetts. They blew out the Colts. They beat them by a score of 45-7. End of story. No one was thinking much about it except for the fact that during the second quarter of the game, a Colts player intercepted the football and brought it back to his team's sidelines. Now, granted, before this game, the Colts had emailed the NFL saying, watch the Patriots, they tend to underinflate their balls. There's a regulated PSI that you have to have. It's between, I believe, 12.5 and 13.5 PSI for each ball. So when they intercepted this ball, they checked it, and they had the refs check it at halftime, and it was very much underinflated. Now, the problem with this is it's a bit biased because they've never done that check before. However, it's correct. You should have checks and balances, which is one of the things that have gone against the NFL. So when they checked the ball, it was underinflated. And that's where we have the big story of Deflategate because they think that because the ball was underinflated, they gave the Patriots an advantage in terms of throwing the ball. All right, so company statements. So to have a non-biased investigation, the commissioner, Roger Goodell, who for most people that don't know the NFL, everyone hates him. So, yeah, everyone boos him every time he's up on stage. So he wanted an outside source to do this. So he got this guy named Ted Wells, who's a lawyer. So everyone at first was thinking this is a great idea. We got an outside source to do this investigation. However, eventually Roger Goodell claims him as the NFL's lawyer. So now, once again, it's a biased opinion. Ted Wells conducts this investigation, which takes way too long. It's over many months. And the problem with the ending of the investigation is that it's vague. They end up finding the Patriots guilty of deflating the ball, and they hand down a punishment of a 4-game suspension for quarterback Tom Brady, a loss of 2 draft picks, so a first rounder for the following year, which is a big hit, and a 4th rounder for the next year. And then they also suspended, they fined the team $1 million, which is like a slap on the wrist. Now, the problem with the investigation is when they found the team guilty, it was very vague. To find someone guilty, you have to say, this is the evidence. We without a doubt know that you have committed this crime. So Tom Brady wasn't being exactly cooperative with them. So what they had to do was go through the team game manager who has the balls, and they went through his phone records, and they saw that he had more calls and more text messages than usual from Tom Brady during this period at the beginning of the investigation, which made them say that it is more probable than not that that the team deflated the balls, and that Tom Brady was at least aware that it was going on. So the correspondence. Wells issued the report, and within 2 weeks of him issuing the report, the NFL Player Association, so they protect the players, immediately releases a letter that Brady's going to sign an appeal for his suspension. So Brady takes them to the district court, and the judge rules in favor of Brady, saying that the NFL has overreached its boundaries and that he's fine. However, it goes to the Circuit Court of Appeals in New York, the second district court, and they say that no, Goodell is right, and then they give him the 4-game suspension. Now, because this went down, he's supposed to get the 4-game suspension the following year. This all pushed it to the year after, which was this year, and that's how it happened now. Published materials. So a lot of people obviously weighed in on this conversation. So they have these people called McCann Award winners, and these are people who are football quote-unquote experts who have been in the business for a long time, and they've won this award for their knowledge of the NFL. And most of them said that Brady and Belichick either should have been fined or suspended. However, I agree with the one guy, McLean's came, and he said that Brady was given way too harsh of a punishment. The reason I agree with this is because they gave him a 4-game suspension. Now, they've given players less suspensions for domestic violence. So you're going to say air pressure in the ball compares to beating a woman? I just don't see the correlation. All right, so we have some TV commercials.
Week of Greatness brought it again for the 5th year.
How is it possible it keeps getting better even after all these years?
Kind of makes you wonder what Foot Locker's up to. You know, that's an unfortunate mindset you got there, Tom Brady. Just because something's great year after year doesn't mean anything's going on. Why can't some things just be great? Just a question. It starts with questions, and then questions turn into assumptions, and then assumptions turn into vacations. So why would you punish the Week of Greatness for something that never even happened? I lost my appetite.
Yeah, I really liked that commercial specifically because it just kind of pivots at the point that the NFL kind of jumped to conclusions because they've been winning. Something must be going on. And then we won't watch the other one, but it's a Dr. Pepper commercial. Essentially, it just has a guy at the end messing around with an inflated ball. And I thought that this was very relevant because it just shows how much their PR did a horrible job. It's just a big joke to everyone. You know, they just did a terrible job, which is the problem because PR in the entertainment business, that's the biggest thing. So I have some appropriate and inappropriate responses I thought that the Patriots had to this crisis. I thought one thing that they did great that was appropriate was they got an outside source. Ended up kind of being a sore thumb, like I said before, because he ended up being the league's lawyer when he should have just stayed an outside source. And then the other thing I thought that they did really well was they took action when they found that he was guilty. You know, to keep the integrity of the league, if you find that someone has cheated, you have to take action. Now, what I found they did inappropriate was that they had a biased decision. The Patriots have been caught in the past doing kind of small little things that they've cheated on, which is why going into it, you're automatically going to assume, yes, they cheated. But science actually proved that because it was so cold out that day, that the molecules of the ball and the air pressure obviously goes down, so they get tighter together. So they really didn't do the research that well. Like I said before, I thought the punishment was way too harsh. Domestic violence gets less air pressure. I don't think that works right. I didn't like the elongated investigation that they did. It should not take months. It took around 6 months to figure out if a ball had air pressure or not. It's way too long. And then they just did a horrible job of public relations because the people as a whole just saw it as a big joke. Alright, so in understanding the important concepts, you know, the NFL has to address this in a timely manner, take ownership for some of the mistakes, and I just think they need to implement the corrections. Lastly, what the NFL could have done. What I think the NFL should have done was address and inform its fans of the crisis immediately. When it first happened, just give a clear and concise, hey, we think this was an issue, give us less air in the ball, we think it could have affected the game, and we're going to look into it. Conduct a fair and organized investigation. They should have looked at the scientific evidence to see how the air pressure could have amounted to go down. Then they should have also looked into the phone records, which they did, and it should have been done in a timely manner. And then the most important thing I think I found is give a definitive conclusion. You can't be vague. You can't say there's probable cause that Tom Brady did this, or we think it's likely. No, you have to say there's evidence, without a doubt he did this, then we can give a punishment. And then I think they should adjust rules, regulations, and procedures accordingly so that the game can be better. For example, when I said that they only check the ball for the first time ever at halftime, it's the first time they've ever done that, there needs to be rules and regulations that every halftime they check the ball so this doesn't happen. And then I think you should inform your fans of your conclusion for your most important thing, reestablishing integrity. As I said before, this is the entertainment business. Integrity is the biggest key. So once you've corrected what you've done, and you've made the proper corrections, you need to say to the people, hey, you've done this, we know we messed up, but we corrected it, and I hope you can forgive us. And that's it.
I love that you never
Did you hold up the sign there?
You forgot.
Uh-oh, you forgot. No. I think the last two are a little bit long there. Did you hold it up for Brian too? No? Brian's, I think they're a bit long. But all right. No, they're really interesting, though. They're so interesting. Yeah. Any questions for Dylan, though? Any questions?
Yeah, questions.
Right away.
Do you know the actual fine for an equipment malfunction in the game? It's a little bit of a loaded question because my dad's a football ref, and it's only $25,000.
You mean for doing something like that, for tampering with the football?
It's in the NFL rules and regulations.
Oh.
That's only $25,000 for an equipment malfunction.
Well, one, I think
Well, the money they make, I mean.
One, the NFL is at fault because, like I said, the Colts before the game emailed them saying to check the pressure of the balls. Now, what they should have done before the game was email the Patriots and say, hey, we're going to check just to make sure that there's no funny business. And then there would have been no problem. It was their lack of communication that caused the problem.
Yeah, I suppose, but as you said, there's no rule that says that footballs have to be checked before a game.
There
Is there a rule?
They check
all
them.
footballs are checked
They
before
check
a
them.
game.
They check them before, but not during the game.
Oh, I see. Not during the game. Yeah, so nobody can tamper during
So
the game.
yeah, either during the game or even if it's cold out, because in Boston, Massachusetts, it's always freezing. There are like games.
No, that's why my tires are kind of flat today.
Yeah, the atoms in the ball
Yeah.
is tighter, so then the ball has less pressure.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other problem is there's the other major quarterback in the league is Aaron Rodgers. He actually likes his ball overinflated.
Oh.
But they don't have a problem with that. So it's contradictory.
Yeah.
You can't have a problem with one and not the other. It's a biased opinion.
Yeah. There's a big problem with the NFL rules and regulations too there. Yeah.
The air pressure also didn't affect the game, which is why it was a terrible PR decision.
Yeah. But you said they never ever checked them. Like if they checked it, if it's a rule, they have to check them before the game, but they never ever checked them in the middle of the game. Never. No. Okay. So not any game time check.
It used to air cause one game.
Well, yeah, sure. Air could come out of the ball. Sure.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a study done after by a bunch of crazy Patriots fans in Boston, and the amount of PSI that was out of the ball only affected the grip on the ball by the width of a piece of paper.
Oh yeah, yeah. And also, what was in your wasn't it in the written part that you wrote? It didn't affect it wouldn't have affected the outcome of the game anyway.
No, because they
It was
won
only
the
the
game.
passing. Sorry.
Yeah, they won the game 45-7.
Yeah.
But the running back of the year had 150 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So
So they won the
yeah.
game on just the running game.
Yeah, they would have won on just the running game.
Yeah. So it didn't matter anyway.
Yeah.
They passed the ball.
They scored more in the second half than they did in the first half. Half of the balls were changed.
They scored more in the second half.
Half of the balls were changed.
Yeah, but the thing is, they were scoring on running the ball.
Yeah, in the second half.
Yeah, but it didn't matter because whether the ball was deflated or not, it didn't matter. It's the passing game. The greatest passing ball, right? I know so much about football, but I'll tell you, I'm getting a bad impression of Goodell. I didn't have that education. Is he still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the bad man.
Yeah.
Every time he gives a speech,
Yeah, thanks a lot, everybody. So, what? Continue on Thursday. Pardon? Are you first? Yeah. Yeah, you have a Oh, signage. Wow, it's right here somewhere. I guess I should have set around. Whoops. Yes. I know, I forgot about that. Whoops. Yeah, signage is short of that.
I guess, was there not one?
Yeah.
I guess there wasn't one.
Yeah, that's okay. I think I pretty well. I mean, I know we presented today anyway.